Good morning, everyone. Today is Friday, May the 20th, 2022, and on the Hebrew calendar, which we knew is the correct calendar, the date is 19 IR 5782. I'm here this morning at my home, and I am using a new coffee cup that my daughter gave me for Mother's Day. It was filled with little Dove chocolates, and I ate them all. But until I got down to the last two, I did not realize that there were actually little verses in the chocolates, not biblical verses, but little sayings. And also for Mother's Day, she got me this beautiful flower. She knows that I love flowers. I only want fake flowers. I love real flowers, but I only want them if I can plant them outside, because I like to keep them forever. And I kill them. I killed a cactus. Okay, I didn't think that was possible. And she also got me this box of coffee. I don't drink enough coffee to use a whole pot. Once in a while I will, but most of the time I don't. And when I try to measure out coffee with a spoon, I get it wrong. I just can't bear the taste of it. So these are the perfect amount for me. This is my favorite blend. So, and she always buys with her heart, which is wonderful. I would much rather somebody spend 10 cents buying me something that they know that I would really like than to buy me something that I don't want and pay hundreds of dollars for it. She also got me this lovely card. I'm not going to show you the card because it's personal, but her drawings, I love that. Takes me back to when she was a little girl. And then she wrote Happy Mother's Day on the back. And she had it put into this gorgeous box. And in case you can't read it, it says Plant Love, Grow Peace. And has love written on the front of the box. And it's got a deep inside to it. I don't know what I'm going to use it for yet, but I will figure out something, because I am going to keep it on my desk so that I can see it always. Right now I'm using it as an easel. I went to buy one for my dry erase board the other day, but they're so expensive. So maybe one day I'll get one. When God's ready for me to get one, I'll get one. So how I came about deciding to make this video was because a friend of mine that I went to school with, he had posted some information about the movie. He just watched the movie, and he's watched it a lot, but he just finished watching it that day or a few days earlier. And he had some questions about it, and his friends had questions as well and made comments, and they were also making he and his friends were making questions and comments about the events that were not even mentioned in the movie. So God told me that he wanted me to write a book clearing up all this confusion. You know me, I love to do deep research. Sometimes I wonder if maybe I should have been an archaeologist, because I love digging deep, seeing what I can find. And so when I got done with that, he said, make the video, clear up their questions. Because I was just going to write out an article. I said, no, make a video and post it on Facebook and Rumble and on YouTube. So that's what I'm doing. I'm going to be going through their questions and comments in order that they posted them, not necessarily order that they had occurred. And I'm not going to give you throw up the entire Exodus experience with you on this video. But all that information will be in my book. So if I give it all to you now, you won't have a need for the book, right? So, and the information I'm giving you today, I've got more information about that in my book, but I'm just leaning over it. So, anyway, so let's get started. All right. I'm going to pause this just for a moment while I turn my camera to my dry erase board. I have to remain sitting since I don't have an easel. So just one moment. Okay, everyone, I am back. So here's my fancy schmancy board. And you get to see my lovely drawing. I am such an artist. I put Michelangelo and Da Vinci and all those others the same. No, actually, I'm not. So you just kind of have to look over like my stick figures and stuff. I can't even draw a straight line with the straight edge. So, you're going to be hearing a lot about Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt. Excuse me. And when you think of upper, you think north, and lower, you think south. Well, it's not like that in Egypt, so we're just going to draw Egypt like right here. Isn't that lovely wondering? Okay. So that's supposed to be a straight line, and I didn't even get it straight. So since they were kind of evil to the Egyptians at one point, we're going to put them in black. So let's go ahead and mark our directions. We'll do that in orange. So because orange is my favorite color. So this is Egypt. Here's north, south, east, and west. And now we're going to try to write sideways is a little difficult for me. So, but I'm trying to make it just as clear as I can, and I will spell out the words as I'm writing them, just so that you can tell what I've actually written. Because my letters may not be all that clear. You may not be able to read it. So we're going to put the dial right here. Okay. So anyway, so you hear about, so you know that when water runs, it runs north to south, right? It runs downwards, right? But the Nile runs upwards, so running from north to south, it flows south to north. So because of that, they call Upper Egypt. No, sorry, Upper Egypt is down here. Yep. Put it right here. Or should I right here? Somewhere? No. So this is Upper Egypt, and this is Lower Egypt. So, and that's, I have to have something physical like this to keep it in my mind whenever I'm trying to research, and because then I'll get them backwards. So we're going to leave this up here as long as we possibly can. One of the mistakes that we make is taking the Bible at face value. One example is fishers of men. We are not taking a fishing pole with bait attached to the end and casting it into a crowd, hoping one of them will be foolish enough to grab the bait with their mouth. nor are we going to throw a net over someone. Another example, just a moment, I'll try to read from my book, rather than doing it from memory. Another example is, I will put a hook in their jaw. God is not going to put a hard, physical, sharply pointed hook in a person's jaw. Another mistake is not reading and studying the entire Bible. Genesis is not the last time we're taught about Adam and Eve. There are mentions of them throughout the Old and New Testament, and these verses tell us more about them than we read in the first few chapters of Genesis. And in fact, there's like little tidbits even in like those, this person is, had this many children, these are their names, and there was 500,000 of this tribe and 400 of this tribe, and let me give you their names of all these people, and and there was the for the tabernacle there was these the curtains were made of this kind of cloth, and it was so many inches long and feet long and all this stuff, and it gets long and boring. But whenever you skip over that, somewhere tucked in there's always some little tidbit of information. In fact, and I think it was I'm speaking off the top of my head right now, but I think it was in Numbers. But it mentions that Pharaoh's daughter was with them in the wilderness. Because so just talk about who she married at the Israelites. So that way we know that she that the woman who raised Moses left Egypt with him. She turned over to God, left her father's idols and her homeland. And I'm just as bad. And if I say, you do this or you do that, I'm preaching to the choir people. I do it too. So, or I either still do it or I used to do it. And if I'm still doing it, I am doing my very best to overcome it. Okay. Due to the several changes of time, the dates on the secular calendar cannot be stated exactly, but can be pinned down to a difference of only a few years. There used to be, at one point, instead of being 7 days in a week, there were 8 days. Back during the time of George Washington, they changed the year. So the year used to start on March 25th, and they changed it to January 1st. That was in the year 1752. And, we read in the Bible, it says that there would be, people would change times, or they would attempt to change times and seasons, but God's time never changes. That's why we try to go by the Hebrew calendar as much as possible. But whenever you research things, it does not always, it's difficult to line that up with His calendar because of our limited amount of knowledge. And whenever you're doing any type of research, or you're just reading or whatever, and it'll give dates specifically, more specifically in the BC area, it'll say C period 1582 to 1511. That C means about, but these differences in the years are not such a big difference to where it makes it difficult to find information. And we can get all of our information correct. So, the movie, and many people say that the Pharaohs of the Exodus were Seti the first and Ramses the second. So that is the first issue that was brought up, and so we need to find out whether or not that was who they were. So to confirm or deny this, we need to go back to Joseph entering the land of Egypt. Excuse me. Genesis 41, 42 to 43 tells us that Pharaoh put Joseph on his second best chariot. Chariots and horses were brought to Egypt by the Hyksos. And Hyksos was spelled Hyksos. And I may not be pronouncing that right. The Hyksos were a foreign people who came to Egypt during the end of the 12th dynasty of Egypt, which ruled from 1991 to 1802 BC. And again, this was due to the land being divided into Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt. From this information, we know that they arrived during the 1800s BC. The Hyksos came to Egypt first as new subjects to the king. So they basically just came in there and said, hey, we want to be new citizens. Not a lot is known about them, but we know they existed and ruled due to the Turin king list fragments and other sources. They eventually rose up and took over the kingdom. Their reign was known as the Hyksos dynasty, and it's also known as the 15th dynasty. And it lasted from about 1650 to 1550 BC. But they're ruling from 1650 to 1550 BC. Or thereabouts. Now, around this same period of time, not necessarily just on this specific timeline, but that early in Egypt's time, it was some of the dynasties were going concurrently. So just because this might be 15th dynasty up here, down here, because of different changes in the rulers, they would be known. They would have like maybe 12th dynasty. Well, the 15th dynasty is going on. They might have like the 12th dynasty and the 14th dynasty and all this. So dynasties were running concurrently. Seti the first, which is S-E-T-I, first, he reigned about 1323 to 1279 BC. Sorry. So we know he was not living during this time. So, well, so Seti wasn't the ruler. Who was? When the Hyksos were defeated by Ahmose I who was Pharaoh of Upper Egypt. These two lands were united, and a new dynasty began. So all those dynasties came together. And so now we have the 18th dynasty. And this 18th dynasty lasted until 1292 BC. So, but wait, you may be asking. Say the first ruled about 1323 to 1279, then his son Ramses II ruled. This doesn't make sense. Something is definitely wrong. Well, yes and no. Let me explain. Horemheb, which is Horemheb, he was one of the pharaohs of the 18th dynasty. Died about 1292 BC. Since he had no children, this made him the last pharaoh of the 18th dynasty. So the way that the dynasties ran were, they ran through bloodlines. So, Ahmose the First, Ahmose, who defeated the Hyksos, he was the founder of the 18th dynasty. And then his son became Pharaoh after him when he died, and so on and so forth. And then when the bloodline ran out, a new dynasty began. Or if somebody came and made war with him and defeated him, or just came in and just killed him, or whoever was on the throne at the time, then that dynasty ended and a new one began. So since Horemheb was the last pharaoh of the 18th dynasty, he decided he didn't want some unknown person to just come and take his throne and possibly undo all the good he had done. So he appointed his vizier, which is spelled Vizier. It was kind of like Joseph was back when he became second to Pharaoh. So he was like Pharaoh's vizier. And this is the highest official in ancient Egypt other than the Pharaoh. So he took his vizier, whose name was Parmesi, and I'm just guessing on a lot of these names. So it's P-A-R-A-M-E-S-S-E. To be the next Pharaoh. This was a reward for his loyalty. Also, Horemheb wanted to secure Egypt's royal succession, and Parmesi had a son and a grandson. So his son, his name, Parmesi's son, was, guess who? Seti the First. And his grandson's name was Ramses II. Ramses II. Some places have two S's right here. Ramses, and I've seen it spelled many multiple ways, so I really do not know the actual correct spelling. Upon accession to the throne, Paramesi changed his name to Ramses you're not able to see that, so there it is. He changed it to Ramses the First. Let me just erase some of this stuff. Also, I could not find an eraser, so I've got the fancy schmancy eraser. So, Ramses the First reigned about 1 to 2 years, and then Seti the First took the throne. But I know what you're thinking. Well, in the Bible it says that the store cities that they were building, the garrisons, were actually named Ramses and Pithom. So that means, obviously, that they were named after Ramses II, and obviously it would be Seti the First and Ramses II. But I'll explain more to you about why that was mentioned in the Bible later on. So now we have placed the timeline for Seti the First and Ramses II. But do they fit in Moses leading the Israelites out of Egypt? Our next step in getting the correct answer can be found in the story of Solomon building the temple. So let's go back up here and put let's go here and put Seti the First. Let's actually erase this because I don't think we need this anymore. Oops, sorry. So Seti the First, we know Rule 1323 to 1279. Okay. So now let's travel to the future. So we're going to go to 1 Kings 6:1, and so that the temple construction began in the 4th year of Solomon's reign. I'm going to do this in purple because it's royalty. This year also marked 480 years since the Israelites left Egypt. King Solomon was born about 990 BC, and he ruled Israel from 970. Again, these are just abouts, to 931 BC. So we need to subtract 970, or subtract 4 years from 970, and then we get 966. So that's when the temple began, the construction. And then, so if the temple construction began in 966, and that was 480 years after they left Egypt, we come up with 1446. So this is the day that they left Egypt. Can't spell this morning either. Or very close to that year. So this was over 100 years before Seti came to the throne. So now we know that he is definitely not the Pharaoh of the Exodus. So if he was not the Pharaoh who ordered the killing of all the male Hebrew babies, then who was? This can be answered by going back to the timelines and finding out who was the father and son reigning during this time. So we'll erase all of this. And we're going to sit in red. This is the date that we're looking for. Okay. So, what I did was I looked up who was the pharaohs during this 1446 timeline period. And what I do is whenever I look up something, I don't take just the very first thing I see and say, okay, well, that's got to be it. I look at several different sources and confirm it. And so when I did that, I found out that Thutmose the First, Chutmose, the first, and Thutmose the Second were the only two pharaohs that fit. And also in my book you will find where I get all my information. Thutmose the First had 5 children. Thutmose the Second, which is his son, Hatshepsut, Hatshepsut, was his daughter. Then he had another son named Amenmose, Amenmose, and these are not necessarily written in the order of their birth, okay? And then he had a son named Wadjmose, and again, I might not be pronouncing these correctly. It's Wadjmose, and a daughter named Nefertiti, Nefertiti. So, but S for son and D for daughter. Amenmose and Wadjmose both died before their father. So, and these were older than Thutmose. So we're just going to cross them out. Okay. Thutmose II married his sister Hatshepsut and became the pharaoh upon his death because it had to be, he was the only one that could take over. He was the only son left. And that was very common. During ancient Egypt was for brothers and sisters to get married, at least on the royal line. I don't know about commoners, but in the royal line, whoever was going to be Pharaoh married their sister. And they also married other women too who were not their sister, but this, from the way I understand what I was reading, the great wife was always the sister, if they had a sister. Nefertiti is depicted with her parents in Hatshepsut's deer. It's DeirElBahari, Deir el-Bahari mortuary temple. And then she just vanishes. So where did she go? Then Thutmose II, I'll put T2. He only had 2 children. Thutmose III, I'll put T3 on here. That was his son. And Neferuri, that's Neferure. And then Hatshepsut, she was also named as Matkare. Maatkare. And she was at one point, she was also became Pharaoh, and that will be discussed later on. We really don't need to discuss that in this video because it's not relevant right now. But Hatshepsut had Nefertiti, tutored by some of her most trusted advisors. One of the tutors, Ahmose, that's Ahmose, Pen-Nekhbet, Pennekhbet, had written in his tomb, "For me, the god's wife, repeated favors. The king's great wife, Matkare, justified. I brought up her eldest, the Princess Nefertiti, justified, while she was a child at the breast." So we know that Nefertiti was older than Thutmose III. Her tomb has been found atop a sheer cliff in Wadi C of Wadi Qabana al-Qurud. A cartouche containing her name is cut into the cliff below the tomb entrance. Inspection of the tomb shows that she did not outlive her mother. Okay. A recent documentary of expeditions of the Red Sea show human and horse remains, chariots and wheels. There are 4, 6, and 8-spoke chariot wheels lying on the bottom of the Red Sea. So I'm going to erase all this. Just erase all of this. Okay. So there were 4, 6, and 8 spoke wheels. According to an interview with an employee at the museum in Cairo, 8 spoke wheels were only used during the 18th Egyptian dynasty. And I've also I saw this on the television as well. I can't remember the name of it, and I'm wanting to say that this employee was a curator. But I can't find that specific video anymore. I did find other videos though that stated the same thing. But I want to say that it was on the History Channel, but it was a cable television channel. So this is further proof of who the real pharaohs were. So the Exodus was in the 18th dynasty only. So Alfred Edersheim states in his Old Testament Bible history, Tutmosis II is the best qualified to be Pharaoh of the Exodus, based on the fact that he had a brief, prosperous reign and then a sudden collapse with no son, except for Tutmosis III, who was very young, to succeed him. Tutmosis II is the only pharaoh's mummy to display cysts, possible evidence of plagues that spread through the Egyptian and Hittite empires at that time. So, based on all of this information, we can conclude that it was Tutmosis I, because if Tutmosis II was the one who had cysts, then it had to be his dad, who was, or the death of all the Hebrew babies, or male babies. Okay. And it was his daughter, Nefertiti, who was the one who rescued Moses from the Nile. I'm going to put Moses' mother, which we know his real mother's name was Jochebed. But so all the other children are accounted for somewhere. When you go looking about in when you're looking at all these different sources for the different pharaohs of ancient Egypt, you will find information about their children's deaths, either by dates or whatever, except for Nefertiti. There's nothing. So since we know she left, there's no mummy for her or anything. So that proves that she was. And then it was Tutmosis II who was the one during the plagues. And since we know that his daughter was the oldest, she's the one who died. The Bible never mentions that it was the oldest. I mean, the oldest was the male or female. It never says that the Pharaoh's son was male or female. It just says that the oldest of every household, unless they have that blood covering, died. So, and when Tutmosis III came to reign, he was too little to reign, so Hatshepsut took over and reigned. So and so okay, so now I found the information I was trying to tell you. About a little tidbit. So here's another little tidbit about Moses' mother, and it was found actually in First Chronicles. So her name, we know, is Nefertiti. That's her Egyptian name, but God changed her name. And when you go into the Midrash, you find out that they say that her name was Bithia. Well, that's like an English word. And so Bithia could be spelled in, we're always going to start with the, I can't do this, go backwards. That's B. And then it could be either a T, which that's Tet, but Tet kind of has like a negative connotation, so I don't think, because each letter has a different meaning. And so the letter Bet means house. But I don't think it's going to be found, because I've not looked this up in Hebrew, and so I don't know. But when I make my book about the, because I do deep research on Genesis and on the book of Exodus and all the different books of the Bible. And whenever I'm in there, then I will go into that and I will find out more. I'll look into the actual Hebrew for that. But Bithia could also be spelled, and this is why I believe it is, with the letter Tav, which would be TH. And then you have the letter Yud. And then the letter Aleph. Which is the letter A. So Tav is God on the cross. It's also a cross. Yeah, it is a hand. No, wait a minute. I'm going off the top of my head. I don't have. Um, so, Yad means like pillar or support. And Aleph means God. So, Bithya, also, it says like, and you can dig deep and find multiple meanings. But the letter Bet and the letter Tav, that's Bot. And Bot means daughter. And then you can also add the letter Hey here, the 2, which means surprise. So, so you got, Yad Aleph, or Yad Aleph Hey, which means Yah. I suppose the word Yah. And Yah means God. So she's the daughter of God. And so she was also became a surprise house of God that supported Jesus on the cross. So it's because of her that helped bring Jesus onto to us. And you can also, each letter of the Hebrew alphabet also has a number, and so you can use those, add up the numbers and come up with other meanings. So, and I'm not going to go into all of that. Because that takes a whole lot of time, and you can never get, when you doing the Hebrew, you can never get to the bottom of it. There's no end. Which, and we know that God's word, that when you read God's word, you can read it several times and get several different meanings out of it. It's a living thing, just like his alphabet is a living alphabet. So, in 1 Chronicles 4:15-18, we read, the sons of Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, Aru, Elah, and Nahum, the son of Elah, Kenaz, the sons of Yahalalel, Ziph, Ziphah, Teriah, and Asarel, the sons of Ezra, Yeter, Mered, Ephah, and Yalan. These are the sons of Bithya, the daughter of Pharaoh, whom Mered took as his wife. She conceived Miriam, Shammai, and Ishbak, the father of Eshmoah, while his Jewish wife bore Yered, the father of Gedor, Heber, the father of Soko. And Yektuel, the father of Zanoach. According to the oral Torah, because of her tenderness and courage to defy her father's decree, God changed her name to Bithya, daughter of God. And so, and now, another question that's come up was, how long were they in Egypt? So, in Genesis 15, God tells Abram that the land where he is currently living, Canaan, will be given to his seed. Before they take possession of it, they will be foreigners in a land that is not theirs. They will be slaves and held in oppression there 400 years. But I will also judge that nation, the one that makes them slaves. Afterwards, they will leave with many possessions. As for you, you will join your ancestors in peace and be buried at a good old age. Only in the 4th generation will your descendants come back here, because only then will the Emorah be ripe for punishment. From these verses, most people believe the Israelites were not only in Egypt for 400 years, but they were enslaved the entire time. This is not so. So to get this settled, we need to go to the genealogy of Moses. Okay, so in Exodus 6:14, it says that Levi's sons were Gershon, Kohat, and Merari. Exodus 6:18 states Kohat's sons were Amram, Yitzhar, Hebron, and Uzziel. According to Exodus 6:20, Amram, his Kohat's son, married Jochebed, Levi's daughter. Okay, sources. So let's see. So we have Levi, and I'm going to put it down all these names. So Levi had a son named Kohat, K''Hat, and Kohat had a son named Amram. And Levi also had a daughter named Jochebed. That's the son Bible says Jochebed. But I'll use the complete Jewish Bible because it is more closely to the correct translation than even the King James. So that's Yokheved. Okay. So then Amram married Jochebed. And of course we know that they had Moses. If the Israelites had lived in Egypt for 400 years, then Jochebed would have been about 320 when Moses was born, because we know that she was, that Moses was 80 when they left Exodus. They left when the Exodus happened. Jochebed's birth is described in Numbers 26:57-59. Those counted among the Levi by their families were of Gershon, the family of the Gershoni, of Kohat, the family of the Kohati, and of Merari, the family of the Merari. These are the families of Levi. the family of the Livni, the family of the Hebroni, the family of the Machli, the family of the Mushi, and the family of the Korhi. Kahat was the father of Avram. The name of Amram's wife was, Kahat was the father of Amram. The name of Amram's wife was Jochebed, the daughter of Levi, who was born to Levi in Egypt, and she bore to Amram, Aharon, Moshe, and their sister Miriam. So the 400 years started when Isaac was born. Abraham's descendants, Isaac, were always traveling from one place to another. When you add up these years, you find the time difference. So we're looking for the year 400. Let's see. We'll do it in black. Okay. So in Genesis 16 to 15, we find out that Abram had lived in Canaan for 10 years when he gets Hagar pregnant. So we know that he was 86 when Ishmael was born, so that means he was 85 when he gets Hagar pregnant. He's lived there for 10 years. So he was 75 when he enters Canaan. Okay. For AB for Abraham. Okay, and he was 100 when Isaac was born. So we take off the 75 from the 100. That's not going right good. Sideways. And this is how many total years he lives in Canaan. Or that he had lived in Canaan for 25 years when Isaac was born. Okay? And then in Genesis 23, 1, we found out that Sarah was 127 when she died. And that we know that she was 90 years old whenever Isaac was born. So Isaac is 37. But I asked for Isaac right here. And Sarah dies. And so far we know. Let's see, no, not yet. Sorry, I'm jumping a little bit ahead of myself. And then in Genesis 25:7, we know that Abraham was 175 years old whenever he died. And then if we subtract the 100 years that he was when Isaac was born, we find out that Isaac was 75 years old whenever Abraham dies. Okay, so far we know that the 400 up here, that 75 years of the 400 have passed. So now we need to come up with 325 more years. So, and then in Genesis 35:28, we find out that Isaac was 180 years old when he died. So, 180 years of the 400 have passed. So then if we subtract 400 minus 180, we get 220. Here's what we need to account for. Okay, so now we need to go on to Jacob. Genesis 47:28 tells us that Jacob lived to be 147 years old. And Isaac was 60 years older than Jacob. So Jacob was 120 whenever Isaac died. And we get this from taking the 180 and subtracted this 60, and we come up with 120 years old. And Jacob lived in Egypt for 17 years before he died. So if he was 147 when he died, that means that he was 130 when he entered Egypt. And a lot of this information you can find it even says in Genesis that he was 130 years old whenever he entered Egypt, because he tells the Pharaoh that. So whenever Jacob and his family enters Egypt, except for Joseph, he's 130, and it says that also in Genesis 47:9. So in Genesis 35:28, we find out that Joseph was 17 when he entered Egypt. That's whenever he's sold to the Midianites, and then they sell him to the Egyptians. He was 30 when he interpreted Pharaoh's dream. And that's in Genesis 41:46. So, whenever he enters, so he interprets the dream, he's been living in Egypt for 13 years. Okay. So, now we're going on down to when his family comes into Egypt. So, whenever they enter Egypt in Genesis 45:6, there are 5 years left of the famine. Because we know that there was going to be this way. Because that timeline of the dream was 14 years. And you have, so if you take away 7 of the good years, then you have 7 years left for the bad years. So that means if there's 5 years left, that means that 9 years of the dream have passed away, have already passed. So 7 of the good years and 2 of the bad. So then we'll take the 30 that he was when he interpreted the dream, and then add the 9, and we'll get it to, he was 39 whenever his family comes. And if he was 39 when his family arrives, and he was 17 whenever he arrived, means he'd been living in Egypt for 22 years whenever his family arrives. So now let's go down here to find out when how old Jacob was whenever Joseph was born. Because we're never really told that. So if you take the 130 years that Jacob lived, and or the 130 years that Jacob was whenever he entered Egypt, I'm sorry, and then you subtract the 39 years that Jacob was, that Joseph was whenever his father and the rest of the family entered Egypt, you come up to 91. So Jacob was 91 when Joseph was born. And we were giving ages of other family members that were how old they were whenever they passed away. but we don't really know how old they were whenever they entered Egypt or how long they lived in Egypt. We really have no way of finding that out. That might be in some of the oral laws and writings, which is what the Midrash and the Mishnah and all that is. If we looked into Josephus and Eusebius and Manetho and all those people, we might be able to find it. I have not done that at this time, but at a future book I will definitely see if I can find that out as well. And we can also take the age that Joseph was when that Jacob was whenever Joseph was born, and then we add the 17 years that Joseph was whenever he was sold. And so we know that Jacob was 108 when Joseph was sold. And he doesn't know that he is, that Jacob has been sold. He just knows that Jacob doesn't know that Joseph has been sold. He just knows that he has disappeared, and he's been told that he was actually killed. So let's just erase some of this stuff. Let's see. Let's erase. Up to here. There's plenty more room left on my board, but because I'm having to use my laptop as a camera, you can't see the whole board, unfortunately. And I don't have an easel also, so that makes it a problem as well. So since Jacob was 108 when Isaac had not died when Joseph was sold to the Midianites. But since Jacob was 108 when this occurred, Isaac was 168. So we know that. Let's go back up here to Isaac. No, sorry, Jacob. Jacob 108. And then you add the 60 years that where Isaac is 60 years older than Jacob, so Isaac at Joseph's slavery. And then if you take 400 and you do the minus 168, there's 232 years left to be accounted for. The sages say they lived in Egypt for 210 years. So if you subtract the time Joseph lived there, until his family arrived. So he lived in Egypt 22 years when he finally arrived. So you come up with 210. So you get 210 years. So Joseph lived in Egypt 93 years. He died at 110. The Israelites lived in Egypt 54 years until his death. So if you do 93 minus the 39 before that he was whenever they came, you come up with 54. They lived another 156 years after his death. So he's 110 when he dies. Oh, I'm sorry. You're going to do the 210 minus the 54. And then you come up with 156. So the most that they were in bondage was 156 years. So, so we know that they had 54 years at least of freedom. And I have come across a very interesting information about them went into slavery and why they actually went into slavery. And that will be in a future book. So now you're saying, but what about the 430 years mentioned in Exodus? Well, for the answer to this, we need to go to Galatians 4:16. Now, the promises were made to Abraham and to his seed. It doesn't say and to seeds, as if to many. On the contrary, it speaks of one, and to your seed, and this one is the Messiah. Here's what I'm saying. The legal part of the Torah, which came into being 430 years later, does not nullify an oath sworn by God, so as to abolish the promise. They left Egypt 430 years after God made the promise to Abraham. So, you have the 25 years that he lived in Canaan. So that means that 5 years before he entered Canaan, that's whenever the promise came to be. So that was 30 years between the covenant that God made with Abraham and until till Isaac was born. That's all it is. And also, when God's given him that promise, it says that there was a horrible darkness, terrifying darkness that became Abraham. And I personally believe that he saw he actually saw them in bondage. I have no proof of that. That is just my belief. Alright, everyone. So, another misconception that was mentioned was about Zipporah being black, that she was a Cushite. That is impossible because it mentions that whenever Moses left Egypt after he killed the Egyptian, that he went to Midian. So this is a rough little drawing of the area. So here's Egypt. This whole thing is like Africa and Saudi Arabia and all that area. Okay. Alright, so here's Egypt. Down here to the south in Africa is Cush. Moses did marry Cushite, and that's another thing that they have. The reason why they say that that Zipporah was a Cushite is because it mentions that whenever after they've left Egypt, the Israelites have left Egypt, that Miriam and Aaron confront him about the Cushite woman. Well, he had went to war down in Cush, the land of Cush, and there is more of this information about this in my book. But he went down to Cush, and there he married a Cushite woman. And then but that was before he left. He killed the Egyptian and left to go to Midian. And Midian is over here. This is where Zipporah was at. So these are two completely different places. And Cush and Ethiopia, we know, are basically the same place. So that clears up that confusion. Then the other things were that the it's listed that that there were about them wandering in the desert for 40 years. How did no one actually know where they were all that time? Well, one thing we know that, and all these answers can be found just by reading, actually. Now the whole thing about Midian and Cush, that could be kind of confusing, and I can understand unless you actually get out and look on a map and all that, and you research, you can misunderstand that. But the God went before them in a pillar of fire and a pillar of smoke. It was a pillar of smoke during the day and a pillar of fire at night to light their way. And that's and whenever those pillars stopped, they stopped, and whenever they moved, then the Israelites moved. He watched over them, he protected them during their entire journey. They did encounter people. It mentions that in the Bible that they did encounter other lands, and they asked to go through their lands, and they were told no, and all this stuff. And it's not about dwindling supplies. Well, their supplies never dwindled. Whenever they left Egypt, they took basically everything, People were just giving them things. Anything they asked for, they gave to them. And so they left with lots and lots of livestock and gold and food and everything that they needed. And God supplied for them also while they were there. You think about, just, during 40 years, their livestock would be having babies, and some animals have more than one, and they have multiples, like chickens and stuff. I don't know what all they took with them, but they had plenty, and God made sure they had plenty of everything that they needed. And it even says that during their wandering years, that during those 40 years that they were their shoes never wore out. their clothes never look good. Their clothes still look brand new. And so if he's going to make sure that their clothing and their shoes are new, don't you think he's going to make sure that they have food? And it even tells about where, they grumble constantly. And he would have birds drop out of the sky, and and they'd be like really high, birds for them to eat. And he provided through them manna, which is a special food. I've heard it's called angel's food. And they would go out every morning. They'd pick up enough for each day. But on Fridays, which is the 6th day, they picked up double the amount. And that was still lasted for Friday and Saturday because it's the Sabbath. And you never picked up more than what you needed. You could try to, but it always, you never, but you got exactly what you were supposed to have. So, I think it was an hour per person, I think is what it said. So, if you had, it was you, and you had 3 little ones, well, the little ones they might be too little to go out there and pick up. So then that would be 4 omers that you would pick up. But if you were by yourself, you'd only pick up one omer. And it says we want to know why Moses was not allowed to enter the new land. That was because he struck the rock twice. God told him to speak to the rock. Now, the first time he told him to strike the rock. The second time, and this was to bring water out for everybody. The second time, God told him to speak to the rock, and instead, he hit it twice. Let's see. I've got that marked in here. I'm going to pause this for a moment while I look that up real quick. Okay, so it's in the book of Numbers, chapter 20. And they've grumbled because they're needing water. And we're going to start in verse 7. Adonai said to Moshe, "Take the staff, assemble the community, you and Aharon your brother, and before their eyes tell the rock to produce its water." They says speak, so he doesn't speak. You will bring them water out of the rock and thus enable the community and their livestock to drink. Moshe took the staff from the presence of Adonai as he had ordered him. But after Moshe and Aharon had assembled the community in front of the rock, he said to them, "Listen here, you rebels! Are we supposed to bring you water from this rock?" Then Moshe raised his hand and hit the rock twice with his staff. So once it could have been like, "Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, God, I didn't mean to do that," but then he did it again. So the second time we noticed it's definitely intentional. Water flowed out in abundance, and the community and their livestock drank. But Adonai said to Moshe and Aharon, "Because you did not trust in me, so as to cause me to be regarded as holy by the people of Israel, you will not bring this community into the land I have given them. This is Meribah's spring, disputation spring, where the people of Israel disputed with Adonai, and he was caused to be regarded as holy by them. And Aaron, we know, also died in the wilderness. He died before Moses did. And that was because he had the opportunity to say, because it might have happened so fast he didn't catch it the first time. But then, we started raising his hand the second time. He had the opportunity to grab Moses and say, Moses, don't. And if he had done that, then he would have been able to go on into the land of Canaan, the promised land. If he had not, if Moses had listened to him when he said that, then Moses could have entered. But if Moses had not listened to Aaron, then Aaron could have entered the land of Israel, but Moses would not have been able to. And the reason why they had to wander in the desert for 40 years was because when they were very close, they were right there at the border. God sent them out to spy, or Moses sent them out to spy out the land, and they came back with reports. These people were, giants, and and they even showing the grape clusters. They were so huge. All the food was huge because they were giants, and so that part was truthful. But then they was telling the people, but we can't defeat them. Now God's already showed them all these miracles and defeated people in front of them and everything, and they did not believe that God would help them with that. They believed the spies. Two spies, Caleb and Joshua, said, yeah, all this is true, but we can do it. We got God on our side. We can do it. But instead of choosing to believe Joshua and Caleb, they chose to believe the others, and so God says, forget it. You're not going to enter, but your children will. It's going to take 40 years, for you to die out, and it's 1 year for every day, because it's 40 days. Let's see, this was the spies have been they had been there for, they had spied the land out for, it took 40 days to spy the land, so it's 1 day, or 1 year for every day that they were spying on the land. And then another thing was that Moses lived very possibly to be 900 years old. No. He lived only to 120 years old. And we find that in Deuteronomy chapter 34. And we'll begin in verse 1. Moshe ascended from the plains of Moab to Mount Nebo, to the summit of Pisgah, across from Jericho. There Adonai showed him all the land, Gilad as far as Dan, all Naphtali, the land of Ephraim and Manasseh, the land of Yehudah, all the way to the sea beyond, the Negev and the plain, including the valley where Jericho, the city of date palms, is, as far away as Zoar. Adonai said to him, this is the land concerning which I swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Yaakov. I will give it to your descendants. I have let you see it with your eyes, but you will not cross over there. So Moshe, the servant of Adonai, died there in the land of Moab, as Adonai had said. He was buried in the valley across from Peor in the land of Moab. But to this day, no one knows where his grave is. Moshe was 120 years old when he died, with eyes undimmed and vigor undiminished. The people of Israel mourned Moshe on the plains of Moab for 30 days. After this, the days of crying and mourning for Moshe ended. So, and God buried him. We find that out in later on in the Bible. There are verses that say that, that God buried him, and that I think it was Michael, and Satan argued over Moses' body. And I think that's all of the questions and comments that they had. So I hope that this has been a very interesting video for you, and I'll let you know when the book will be coming out and the name of the book. Right now I am calling it Inaccuracies of the 1956 movie of the Ten Commandments and Other Misconceptions. And that is a very long name, but the name of the book will be something kind of similar to that, but not as long and as that one is. So I hope you all have a very wonderful and blessed rest of your week, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.